Thanks for joining us at Shoptalk TV. Up next, an interview with Mark Barocas, CEO of SharkNinja. Mark will be interviewed by Joe Laszlo, head of insights at Shoptalk.
Mark, welcome to Shoptalk TV. It's a delight to be sitting down with you. You were just on our new market stage a little while ago, and we're following up with a few more questions for our not here in Vegas audience. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I guess my first question is probably the toughest one I'm going to pose to you, which is, of all the products that SharkNinja makes, what's your favorite?
I mean, that's like asking which is my favorite child. I have 3 children. I will actually give you one Shark product and one Ninja product.
Oh, that seems diplomatic.
Absolutely. There's a product called the Ninja Luxe Cafe. It is an espresso coffee, cold brew, iced coffee machine that I use every day in my home. And so that's become kind of a go-to product for me. And then interestingly, I'm a regular user of the Shark Cryo Glow.
Whoa.
LED infrared cryo face mask.
I could probably use that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm getting to be
I'm
the age.
53 years old, and anything that can kind of give me a little jolt, I'm looking for.
Excellent. Very fair answer. Thank you for that. So on stage, when you were talking on the new market stage, the conversation drifted toward, or was very focused on how you're just able to innovate, create new products so quickly. And we talked a bit on stage about just the fact that you do that really well, but I want to explore a little bit the culture that enables that. How do you describe SharkNinja in terms of like a culture of innovation?
It starts with this idea that we call outrageously extraordinary, and it's the desire to want to be the absolute best at what we do, no matter what it is, whether it's product development, whether it's finance, whether it's legal, whether it's IT. And in doing that, what we found is you have to eliminate the fear of failure. Okay, that failure is part of being extraordinary. And if you can kind of, put that aside and you can focus on kind of the outcome and be really clear on making something that is so compelling and exciting for the consumer, the failure is just some roadblocks along the way, speed bumps along the way. And so I think that when you look at a Shark or Ninja product, what's interesting is we'll iterate on up to 20 prototypes before we will actually put the product into tooling. From the time we put the product into tooling, we might change the product 100 times before it goes to market. It all comes down to putting the consumer at the center. The consumer is the one that tells us, are we doing a great job? Are we not doing a great job? We could have hypotheses, but we have to be willing, once we get that feedback from the consumer, to say, let's scrap it and let's move on to something else. And I think in business, when you get so anchored to your idea, you kind of lose your compass, and for us, kind of the compass is, we're positively impacting people's lives every day in every home around the world. That's a mission statement that I wrote back in 2009. And I think if you stay anchored to that, you won't get drifted off into areas that are really kind of counter to positively impacting the consumer.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about just that, overcoming that fear of failure, right? Nobody wants to make something that doesn't go over and be a smash success with customers. And I think maybe in the world of like software development, it's much easier if you're a software engineer. I mean, you still want your product to succeed, but if it fails, it's not like you spent $1 bajillion and 100 physical prototypes along the way to learn that. Like, how do you convince your engineering team or your marketing team that, just because an idea didn't work, that doesn't mean that, they're going to lose their jobs necessarily?
So you brought up the first thing in the beginning. I mean, we have been able to take a very software approach to hardware. I mean, iterative. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Back in 2010, we developed a product called the Shark Multivac. We were enamored by the product. It had incredible suction power. It cleaned, your floors and carpets great. But the fact of the matter is that the product was like an erector set. Okay, when the consumer got it in home, it was difficult. It was complex to put together. They didn't understand it completely. And it was a disastrous failure. I think most companies would kind of put that away and say, never talk to me about the Shark Multivac again. What came out of that is there was a real nugget of something exciting, is this portable power that the consumer could take around. And in 2011, we launched a product called the Shark Liftaway Vacuum. We saw that there was a problem, believe it or not, going into consumer homes. And at that time, most vacuum cleaners had a cord on it. And you'd plug the vacuum in and you'd take a hose out and you'd go up the first 4 stairs of your home. And then you'd have to unplug it, carry the vacuum up the stairs, plug it in, and do the next 4 stairs. And you'd always miss the 2 stairs in the middle. Well, what if you could lift the vacuum off and then go around anywhere with it with the 30-foot cord that you have and clean your ceiling fans or your draperies? Or ultimately, that became the #1 selling vacuum cleaner in America by 2014. And so from what I think was probably the worst failure that we've ever had in a product, became one of the biggest successes in the company.
I love that story. That's great. Let's go back to outrageously extraordinary, because I love that as a tagline, as a mantra, as a guiding force. But it's got to be a little bit of a challenge to instill, especially as you guys are a really big multi-billion-dollar company. And I mean, I guess maybe there's a little bit of self-selection, right? You don't go to work for a company called SharkNinja and expect to be mediocre. But like, are there processes in the course of like training somebody in a new hire orientation that like really helps instill outrageously extraordinary?
So about 5 years ago, I would hear terms that people would say, which was SharkNinja is very entrepreneurial. SharkNinja is really fast-paced. SharkNinja is crazy. And the fact of the matter is that if you don't, define your culture, then you let other people define it for you. And so from that, I started putting down on paper a document called the Success Drivers. What we looked at when we were truly at our best, communicating for impact, details make the difference, progress over perfection, winning is a team sport, rarely satisfied. Those were 5 things that really kind of embodied kind of a SharkNinja leader. We put it out on our website. We made sure that anyone that came to interview at SharkNinja knew this is who we are. And if these things don't speak to you, it's probably not a fit, okay? We then transitioned that to a document called the Leadership Principles, what it takes to be a leader at SharkNinja. Things like owning others' success, things like helping others achieve more than they ever thought possible. And then we followed that up with this idea of outrageously extraordinary. And outrageously extraordinary came down to, for example, things like we want people that are explorers and not tour guides. If you need to have the path, you go into a museum, and if you're going to the Louvre, you want a tour guide. You're with the kids, you want to be in and out in 2 hours, you want to know where the bathroom is, you want to know where the coffee shop is, you want to know how to see the 5 things that you have to see. But in business, you got to be an explorer. You got to be willing to just go out and have a direction of where you want to go, but keep course correcting and pivoting. I said on the main stages we were talking there that, one piece of advice is that, the days of 60-page, business plans, I think are over.
Yeah.
I think by January 2nd of the year, you're already pivoting, okay, and you're evolving. And I think as a company, outrageously extraordinary really kind of puts that front and center to our team.
That's so interesting. I mean, again, kind of thinking about you guys as a company that makes physical products that live in the real world, that's got to be a real challenge, because the product development life cycle is inevitably going to take a long time, especially as you iterate and test and prototype as much as you guys do. So bravo for managing to find that equilibrium.
But even in that, I mean, so we have 1,200 engineers around the world. They're based in Boston, London, and China. We've created a 24/7 innovation cycle. When a product is being worked on in Boston, those engineers go home, the product is passed to China. They work on it. The product is then passed to London. And that cycle goes on. It allows us to be able to bring products to market, not just faster than everyone else, but with a different lens that different engineers bring to it. A Chinese engineer is going to bring more of a design for manufacturing, a design for cost. They're closer to where the factories are. A British engineer is going to bring more of a European, consumer bent to the product. And obviously an American engineer is going to bring, an American, view to it. And so it's really helped us make products that are much more for a global consumer.
That's so interesting, because I was going to my assumption would have been that you kind of find a way to instill kind of a unified culture across the different geographies that you've got offices in. But it kind of sounds like you're leaning into like celebrate the differences, because they each bring something unique to the total final product.
Well, the commonality is we want to be the absolute best, at what we do. And, we want to have a genuine belief and commitment, that what we're doing is extraordinary and exceptional. How we get there could be 100 ways to how we get there. We're not married to any one of those ways. I mean, SharkNinja was the infomercial company back 15 years ago. I mean, we would do long form infomercials. Someone would say, hey, I couldn't sleep at night and I saw, your infomercial on at 2:00 in the morning. Today, we have 7 times more social media engagement than our nearest competitor. I mean,
Yeah.
our largest customer, back 17, 18 years ago was Sears. Our largest customer, 14 years ago was Bed Bath & Beyond. I mean, we need to keep evolving and be relevant wherever the consumer chooses to shop for our products or wherever the consumer chooses to engage with content about our products.
That's great. Last thing on this outrageously extraordinary philosophy is just, I think one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of large organizations have to that is kind of being able to listen to people lower in the organization. And inevitably, as companies get big, like people have their areas of specialization. Are there particular things that you've done as far as, it could be technology solutions, it could be just, again, kind of instilling those best practices that help you hear from people who may not be, the product engineer or whatever, kind of, oh, here's an idea, like we should explore this, or here's a watch out, we should think about it.
So I'll give you 2 examples. Every Thursday, I personally sit in product development meetings for the entire day. I've done this for years and years. And as we've scaled, we've held this as a core principle. We'll go through every single new product, and there'll be people in that room that are right out of college, their first job. And it's a total meritocracy. I mean, if they've come up with an idea that's a great idea, they're presenting that idea to me and to others on the senior leadership team. So kind of access to great ideas, is not going through layers and layers of bureaucracy within the company. I think that's one thing that is super important. I think the second is, I just did a town hall meeting back a couple weeks ago, and one of the things I talk a lot about is, we reserve the right to get smarter. I mean, as a leader, sometimes you make stupid decisions, and you need to have an organization that can tell you that the decision is stupid. And I said to my team that, I feel like we did certain things last year. While we had a great year in 2024, there were some decisions that we made that were stupid decisions. And we decided to change those decisions because we wanted to unstupid ourselves. And I think if you, go out and you make it clear that you're willing to think of anything, you're willing to try anything, you're willing to pivot, you're just looking for the best ideas in pursuit of what I think is a noble purpose, which is, positively impacting consumers' lives. We're not curing cancer, but I think when you look at our products, I think we're making a consumer's home a little better. We're making the family experience a little better. We're helping them cook. We're helping them clean. We're helping them look beautiful. We're helping them engage as a family. I think you stay focused on that's really the core mission of the business.
Solving challenges, creating joy. I love it. Let's bring outrageously extraordinary to life for the audience. I'd love to talk about a specific product, maybe Flex Flame, since it's relatively new. You guys got into propane outdoor cooking. This thing grills, smokes, roasts, griddles, and makes pizza all in one. That's pretty outrageously extraordinary to me. But I don't know if there are any things about where the idea for Flex Flame came from or how you developed it and brought it to market that kind of epitomize what you try to do with all your products.
So look, I think it starts with you putting yourselves in the shoes and being enormously empathetic to the consumer. Our business is not about a core technology. Our business is about going out and finding the next consumer problem. So what was the consumer problem with Flex Flame? I'm a consumer. In April 2024, I go into the parking lot of Home Depot or Lowe's and I see all these outdoor cooking products. And I go to an Orange Apron or a Blue Apron and I say to them, I'm interested in a grill. And they say, okay, well, do you want a grill or do you want a smoker or do you want a pizza oven or do you want a griddle? Well, there's the first problem. There's the first problem. I mean, the consumer now has to decide, has to make a decision. Now, the consumer, if you asked them in a focus group, what would they want? I guarantee you 100 out of 100 consumers wouldn't say, I want it all. They would think that's impossible. That's stupid. Okay. So what do? We say it's not our job to make a better grill. It's not our job to make a better smoker. It's our job to solve the problem of that consumer in the parking lot of having to make a decision. And so we went back to our team and we said, could we make a product, as you said, that grills, smokes, griddles, is a pizza oven, and roasts all under one hood? And after the initial of that's impossible, now we got to get to work and try to figure it out. If we get it right, we think there's a big size of prize opportunity for us. It took us about 2 years to develop, and we ultimately came out a few weeks ago with the product. And I invite you and your viewers to go onto social media. We just did a commercial with David Beckham that's now out. And you'll see the excitement that consumers have around a product that's able to unlock so many things for them to be able to cook outdoors.
That's a great story. I love the idea of like, just because it's impossible doesn't mean we shouldn't try to do it and see what works. So that's great. The last thing I wanted to talk with you about today is you talk about, very rightly, two multi-billion-dollar brands under one umbrella, and I wonder if it creates all kinds of opportunities to have two very different brands, but it also maybe creates some obstacles to brand synergies. And so I guess first, just because I don't know, like, do you try to create brand synergies from the Shark product lines to the Ninja product lines and vice versa?
Okay, so if you go back 10 years ago, we very much kind of kept the two brands separate. Okay, there was a Shark brand that focused on cleaning. There's a Ninja brand that focused on the kitchen. We went public on the New York Stock Exchange in July of 2023. And I think, we came to the realization that there are so many consumers that are buying across brands. Like on our direct-to-consumer site, they own Shark products, they own Ninja products, and they're product company people that own multiple products within a brand. And so we've started more and more to tell the story of the company behind these two great brands. That, there's a company, what's the innovation engine that's developing these Shark and Ninja products? There's a movie that's going to be coming out this summer, F1. It's Brad Pitt's movie. You'll notice that on the car, it's the first time we've marketed SharkNinja. And so SharkNinja is going to be on the car. SharkNinja will be on Brad Pitt's uniform. We're beginning to get much, much more awareness for consumers saying, hey, Shark and Ninja, the same company, and it's the same great products, it's the same company behind these innovative ideas. We're replatforming our e-commerce site to Salesforce in September. The consumer is going to go to a SharkNinja site, and then they'll be able to kind of enter by brand or by category of what they want to shop for. So the plan over the next few years is to continue to keep bringing these brands together and continue to get the consumer to understand that there's this great company, SharkNinja, based in Boston, that is developing these products, to solve consumer problems.
Yeah. How about internally? Like, is there like a Shark floor at headquarters and a Ninja floor at headquarters, or do you try to kind of encourage that mixing and mingling?
We do mix, we do cross-pollinate. I mean, there's people that work on the Shark business or the Ninja business, people who work on both businesses. I think one of the exciting things is if you're an engineer or a product developer at SharkNinja, you can find your next job at SharkNinja. You don't have to go somewhere else. I mean, you might have been working on vacuum cleaners for a few years. Go and move over and work on air fryers or outdoor cooking appliances or coolers or hair dryers, or slushy machines or creamy ice cream makers or skincare products.
Yeah.
So I think, that's what I think really is exciting for us from a product development standpoint is there's so much to offer.
That's great. Shoptalk is about the future, and as we start to wrap our conversation, I would love to get your take on what about the business, the SharkNinja business, has you maybe most excited over the next 12 months or so.
Being in more places in the home and outside of the home, and being in more homes around the world. Again, if I go back to 2009 and we wrote this mission statement of positively impacting people's lives every day in every home around the world, we weren't anywhere else other than the US and Canada. It's exciting today to see our products in 26 countries. It's exciting to see, that consumers as young as 10 years old are telling their parents to go and buy a Ninja Creamy machine. It's exciting to see that, as kids go off to college, they're outfitting their dorm rooms with Shark or Ninja products. You know, their first apartments are with Shark or Ninja products. As they're building a family, they're buying Shark or Ninja products. As they downsize and they're empty nesters, you know, they're outfitting their homes with Shark and Ninja products. So I think it's how do we make sure that we're in more places in and outside the home, and how do we make sure that we're in more homes around the world?
Continue to build that awareness, kind of build those synergies, continuing to be outrageously extraordinary. As I've been thinking about this conversation, I have to say I idly fantasized a bit about starting a company called Vampire Alien and making something extraordinary, and then having you guys buy me, because I think that's the only way your company name could get any cooler would be if it was Shark Ninja Vampire Alien. But Mark, thank you so much for sitting down with us. It's been a huge pleasure talking with you, and so inspiring. Like, I think every organization can learn about how you think about encouraging innovation and encouraging, I don't know, excellence. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for the forum.